Since the mid-1800s, oil has been a critical part of our energy infrastructure and part of our lives. Oil has lit up our streets, driven our transport, started wars and uprisings, made people rich and bankrupt, and with other fossil fuels has heated the planet to the point of a climate emergency. Oil is a primary energy and non-renewable, meaning that it has been formed over millions of years, but we have been using it for less than 200 years. The concept of peak oil refers to the point in time when the maximum rate of extraction of oil is reached, after which there is only decline. It's important to not confuse the term peak oil with oil reserves or oil depletion. We know there are substantial reserves still untapped, an example being the growth of the fracking industry. But climate change has caught up and oil is becoming unviable by the day. Therefore, predictions on when peak oil will occur are being brought forward due to the change in circumstances with things such as a growth in renewable energy. Our next resource on the hit list is coal. It accounts for around 28% of the world's primary energy and around 40% of the world's electricity generation. Coal is the single largest resource contributor to carbon dioxide levels. Countries like Germany have announced they will shut down their last power station by 2038. Therefore, peak coal will occur much sooner than peak oil, even with ignorant governments trying to prop up the industry. Unfortunately, in Australia, it is the banks that influence the demand for coal, more so than the government. Banks are no longer willing to lend to companies who want to build new coal-fired power stations because the banks see the investment as too risky. This was highlighted when a Hong Kong company tried to raise between 4 and 5 billion Australian dollars to build 2 new coal-fired power stations in New South Wales. The state government made statements that it was not actively looking at new coal-fired generators, meaning that they were unlikely to offer subsidies or other help to an investor. However, it is banks that ultimately either lend or don't lend the money, and it is unlikely that these projects will go ahead. Next, we're cooking with gas. For many decades, natural gas was the poor cousin of the oil and coal industries. Gas is a byproduct from production, but now accounts for around 24% of world primary energy generation. It is less polluting than coal, and demand has increased in countries where they are shifting away from the use of coal. Another interesting source is nuclear energy. It uses a non-renewable resource, uranium, and there is no peak level. We could have another 100,000 years worth. It produces very low emissions because nothing is burned. Controlled nuclear reactions efficiently heat water to run steam turbines, but radioactive waste is produced. Accidents at a nuclear power plant can be catastrophic. Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, Fukushima are 3 examples that put the dangers of nuclear power under the spotlight and turn public opinion against it. However, organisations and governments deal with risk. Is the threat of climate change great enough that we need to adopt nuclear power as a short-term solution for energy supply? The answer most likely again lies with banks. Nuclear power plants are long-term assets because of the very high costs to build a plant and high costs to decommission it. Payoff dates are decades into the future, and policy uncertainty and the PR risks associated with nuclear accidents make banks wary. Therefore, nuclear power requires strong government support for it to be a viable option. To recap, we have been using non-renewable energy sources for hundreds of years. Fossil fuel reserves are sufficient to support demand in the medium term. However, factors are making them less attractive as investments. The emissions created from using non-renewable resources is increasing carbon dioxide to unsustainable levels and is having catastrophic effects on the Earth's climate. Stakeholders are pressuring industry to move to low-emission technology, and governments are trying to position countries to transition to low-emission economies. However, anyone could argue that not enough is being done, and what is being attempted is too slow. In some countries, the introduction of carbon taxes and emission trading schemes is providing hope that emissions can be reduced. What can be agreed is there is not one energy source type that will replace non-renewables. It will involve a complex network of different energy sources to support a country's energy demands.